continue to work for my community.
I call the member for Whitsunday.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And it was really interesting to hear the minister speak about us here on this side feeding the fears. It was also interesting to observe and hear the member for Pine Rivers talk about the cheap political stunt, in us moving this motion of the House. And then also the member for Thuringowa to talk about the serious problem. At least he recognised there's a serious problem. But I don't think we are feeding the fears of people of Queensland, or in particular the people of Townsville, Mr. Speaker, when we saw a rescue chopper being utilised to round up juvenile offenders, being utilised, a rescue chopper, a resource that shouldn't be utilised. You're proud that you've had to use that many rescue choppers. I'll take that interjection. To use a rescue chopper
member for Thuringowa, you're warned under standing orders.
To round up juveniles when police resources are already under enormous stress. And I point to media that was mentioned in the 13th of May about the relentless 2 weeks in North Queensland of juvenile crime. People in North Queensland are scared. People in the community are scared, taking their children to school when cars are racing amongst school communities over 100 kilometres an hour. And I quote, the Premier said back in February, the loss of 4 innocent lives linked to a spate of senseless crime will not go unanswered. And yet in the last month we have seen a significant increase across Townsville. And the member for Townsville and the member for Thuringowa talk about the need for the member for Burdekin to get on the phone. He is on the phone, Mr. Speaker. He is on the phone to the constituents of Townsville and Thuringowa, because when they call the officers, they are not receiving the response that they expect from their elected representatives, Mr. Speaker. And the member for Burdekin is pleased to be able to stand up and advocate, and I'm pleased to be able to stand up and continue to advocate and support him also. We've seen that there is a targeted approach, and the police minister came out the day after the use of a chopper, Mr. Speaker, that with all the legislative and the frontline strategies at the disposal, it would make a difference. Well, Mr. Speaker, we certainly hope it does. I also want to highlight across the community, in particular my local community of Whitsunday and Mackay, the marginalised and at-risk children and young people that remain forgotten by this government, the victims of family violence and neglect, Mr. Speaker, who are sadly influenced by older offenders, sadly don't have safe homes to go to, who are exposed to illicit drugs and alcohol, those young people that are suffering with significant mental health challenges, and the lack of support services in my community of the Whitsundays. We've been waiting several years now for increased funding for youth services, and I want to make special mention to Youth Space in Proserpine, to the Whitsunday Neighbourhood Hub, and also to YERS in Mackay, the Youth Referral Service, who have all at different times come together with concepts and ideas, and they have put forward, Mr. Speaker, to state government departments and youth justice agencies about early intervention, opportunities for respite on weekends, opportunities to be able to work with young at-risk people, but there is no funding for these services, Mr. Speaker. And I ask the Minister for Youth Justice, to engage with grassroots organisations who are ready to go. They are ready to go, Mr. Speaker, with volunteer support. They are ready to go because apparently we only support young people from the hours of 9 till 4. Yeah. That is all the government funds. Exactly. I'll take that interjection from the member for Everton. It isn't working well. It isn't working out well. It is failing. It is failing young people in my community. The government speaks of early intervention, and that will only be shown in the upcoming budget when we see a significant allocation of funding for programs of early intervention. And I certainly hope that that funding is not just allocated to South East Queensland and the large populations, but is recognised in particular in rural, regional and remote Queensland, where we already see a deficiency in services to help support young people and families at the most important time.
Speaker.